Well, good afternoon. Today, I am so glad to join Paige Jenkins, Chair of the Steering Committee of the Military Women's Coalition and founder of the Red Feather Ranch. I'm pleased to join her for a Zoom call to talk more about Paige's organization's priorities and how VA can do a better job for our diverse veteran population. And I want to welcome you, Paige. And I don't mean to say it's your organization, but it's, you have probably many members, but you're representing it today. So can you begin by telling us a bit about the Military Women's Coalition and the work that you do on Red Feather Ranch?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation. Military Women's Coalition is a group of formal and informal organizations that primarily represent service women, women veterans, retired service women, Guard, Reserve, etc. And our mission is to represent these women in legislative affairs and to give a voice. We're the organizational voice from all across the country. It's a national organization.
Wow. So tell me what the top concerns are. What what are the main things you're concerned with, your organization is?
Well, we have three policy committees: housing and homelessness, wellness, which covers both physical and mental health wellness, and sexual violence. And most of the issues that women veterans are dealing with trace back to sexual violence issues. From anything from sexism to sexual harassment to sexual assault and rape. And I realize that you're the chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee, and it's part of the Department of Defense. It's hard to separate the Department of Defense and Veterans Affairs. But we see kind of the same things happening in Veterans Affairs that we see happening in the Department of Defense.
Yeah, I had a I think stronger sense of that in the past couple of years, dealing with some issues related to sexual harassment. It's not up toward me, but toward one of my staffers who is a veteran. And so it was eye-opening for me to see the challenges within the Department of Veterans Affairs. And of course, veterans carry with them often silently and for many years after they leave the service, violations against them, both harassment and assault and rapes that occurred while they were in service. And so there is a continuity between the Department of Defense and the Department of Veterans Affairs in terms of, well, I won't say continuity, but it's a shared sort of, I think, responsibility to address the lingering effects of what happens. And I know that I've seen some numbers. I've seen one number, like 31% of all women service members screen positive for some sort of MST, military sexual assault, and that may be low. That's probably likely a low number. And anyway, it has. So why don't so here's the next question I have for you is, what is the biggest change you'd like to see at VA to ensure it becomes a more inclusive, welcoming and equitable institution?
Well, to reflect back, also the people go to boot camp for 2 to 3 months, and we don't have transition out programs like we have transitioning into the military. And it's a different transition out for women because, let's face it, women are different. Uh, and even if a woman didn't experience sexual assault or harassment while they were in the service, many experienced sexism. And the transition out is acknowledge. Women feel invisible when they get out of the service. They don't fit into the civilian world. Many of them have been betrayed by the very institution that they took an oath to. And they need a special, a different type of transition program, which a lot of what the Military Women's Coalition membership is about their peer support organizations. A lot of veterans have come out, particularly women veterans, and started peer support organizations. Of course, there's women that it doesn't make a difference to them whether they're in a male or a female environment or combination thereof. But oftentimes over time, women find that they want to be in, they need to have the acknowledgement from other female veterans of that shared experience. So I would say working more on the transition programs that are specific to women veterans, because it's a specific experience as a woman.
That's the first time I've heard anyone tell me that. I mean, and you got me intrigued. I mean, it's not like you're telling me something like from outer space. You're making me think. Well, tell me more about what you think this might, how the approach. Tell me more about this. I want to know more about what your thoughts are about this.
Well, I know that the Department of Defense has the TAPS program, the transition assistance. I guess what I'm saying is that there are a lot of organizations that are totally underfunded. There's a handful that have funding, but there's a lot of women vets that have continued in their service by working for free to set up peer support programs. And the VA doesn't know about half of these people and half of these organizations, or more than half, I should say. It would be helpful if these different people and organizations had funding to run their programs, had acknowledgement from the Veterans Administration, and collaborations and partnerships. I can't tell you specifics because every program is doing something different. Individuals are out there doing different things. Some of them are strictly online, especially during periods of COVID. But more funding, getting to know who women veterans are. And, there has been research, particularly for the Department of Defense, on sexual assault and women serving in the military. I don't know how much research there's been as far as the women veterans, and there's been some outside of the VA that people have written papers on and dissertations and that sort of thing. But talking to the majority of women veterans, which the majority are actually enlisted, and not to exclude officers, but speaking to more middle grade enlisted people, I think gives you a better sense of who the population is. And a lot of these organizations are run by people that were in the middle ranks of the enlisted. I just read a news article yesterday about more women are getting out of the military because of sexual harassment and sexual assault. They're not able to retain troops, and they're probably some of their better troops, and they can't keep them in because of the culture. So something needs to happen at the DoD. And again, I got to keep remembering that your Veterans Affairs, but Veterans Affairs can also.
Actually, TAPS is under my jurisdiction. So,
okay.
Yeah, so TAPS actually, I do have a lot to say about. I'm looking at trying to extend my reach there. I do believe that TAPS does get criticized for being superficial and inadequate for across the board, not just for women veterans, but male veterans as well.
Well, Chairman Takano, part of when people go to TAPS, when they're getting out of the service, oftentimes they're like, I don't want anything more to do with the military. and they're not hearing what's being told to them. This isn't true for everyone. Everything I'm saying is not true for everyone, but a lot of people, it's like in one ear and out the other. I got to check this box off and get through this program. So down the road, there needs to be a longer program, more opportunity further down the road for them when they're able to hear things.
Well, I've definitely, that is something I've heard before. I've heard that said by a variety of folks, that we need ways to do what you just said. People can't hear it. There's a point at which they can hear it, and we need a way to be able to be in touch and communicate with those veterans, and those veterans know that there are programs available. So they leave the military not knowing what's available to them, and when it dawns on them that they might need some of these programs, or they might hear it from somebody, we need a way to be able to tell them about it. But I also see on the front end as well that I think there needs to be a lot more forethought on day one about the life cycle of a service member, especially those service members who aren't going to persist in service for 20 years, that we know they're going to leave in 5. We know that certain branches of the military are like that, right? The Marines, you tend to stay in for 5 years, and then a big chunk of them will leave. What I get concerned about is people leaving without a real connection to employment or direction. They will go out on unemployment for a while. And I at some point I had heard that there was a kind of a ridiculously large unemployment expense that we have with separating military members. I would much rather that we were doing a better job of connecting whatever skills they gained in the military. There's something that in the military, I don't know if you've heard of Skills Bridge that they have in the Department of Defense, but up to 6 months before a service member separates, and if they're with the cooperation of their commanding officer, they can go to a base that has a skills program and get housing and food while they're doing some training. There are building trades that have programs like this, and I've seen that there's an array of programs. My one concern is that we'll see for-profit entities get involved and start to use up their GI Bill during this period of time. I'd rather that companies just came in and they offered them opportunities to train for real jobs. But I've seen some service members who were at the officer corps, who were from the academy, who were at the more executive levels of the military, use that time period of separation during Skills Bridge to intern, for corporations. So I would like to see the military think of itself as, you recruit people on the basis of the GI Bill, but how are you really going to empower that recruit to actually make full use of that GI Bill? And I think it's part of the responsibility of the military and the service member to identify goals and also be held accountable to those goals. The military needs to be part of that accountability as well, so that when someone ends their service, it's not just this that you're being plopped out in the world without all the skills that you need. So the life skills, everything else. There's some great stuff that, anyway, I want to know more about what kinds of things that these women are doing to create support groups. Are there general patterns you're seeing? I know you don't necessarily want to talk about everything, but it's like, I'm kind of curious. I'm really curious. What's what people are doing to fill the gaps here.
Well, I know there's a lot of online support groups, and some of those existed prior to COVID.
Uh,
There are online groups that have thousands of members, and I think they also work behind the scenes, offline with individuals, helping them getting hooked up with their benefits or giving them referrals to mental health or sharing experience one-on-one. Uh, I mean, some of them are brick and mortar and they provide services in those ways. I think what I'm trying to tell you is that TAPS is what it is, but there needs to be an extension of it. A lot of folks are not going to be ready to go to work, especially if they've had a sexual assault, then been betrayed by the very institution, and they don't want anything to do with the military. And even oftentimes when they get out, maybe they are take advantage of their GI Bill and get to work, and they're busy and they're doing a lot of things, and then something happens and changes in their life, and all of the stuff they haven't been dealing with comes up at a later date following a divorce or a job loss or whatever it may be, and suddenly they're isolated. They may be isolated when they come out. They may not have a community or a family that they're going back to, but oftentimes these issues show themselves further down the road, and those folks also, veterans are veterans forever. And at any point, they should be able to easily find the programs and the people that fit their personality or whatever their desires may be. And the VA is, whether we're talking benefits or medical, they're only going to offer so much. And all of these various nonprofits are the ones that are going to pick up the slack and work in conjunction with what people are receiving from the Veterans Health Administration and with their benefits.
I recently interviewed a veteran, a female veteran, who said that she had carried the rape around for decades, and that her mother didn't even know she was carrying it around, so you get me thinking here about that. Do we have ways to make women veterans, and all veterans in particular, feel welcome to be able to when the time comes for them to actually, as you say, to deal with what is going on with them? Go ahead.
Yeah, women they're so different from the men, as far as women are, because of the culture in the Department of Defense. Many women feel that they're given the message that they don't belong there. They're not qualified to do their job. And even though some end up doing, twice the work or twice as well as the men, the message is continually, you don't belong here. Then they come out and they've been changed to some extent by their military experience. And granted, they were probably different to begin with by how many women, like 1% of the population maybe of women join the military. So they're a little different maybe to begin with, but they come out and they don't really fit in the civilian world either, because now they've got this military experience. So many of them don't fit in with the old school veterans organizations, which a lot of young people aren't so interested in anymore, but they don't belong there. And so they're trying to find their place and their new mission in life. Some have the history of sexual assault, whether they're dealing with it right away or whether they are using defense mechanisms and not dealing with it and are going to have to deal with it sometime down the road. And that's why I think it's important for the Veterans Administration, yes, it's great to reach out to people right away and to have the TAPS program, but it's a continual process. And people are going to be ready for different programs at different points in time in their life. And the mental health issues may not show for quite some time after an assault or whatever has occurred during their time in service. So knowing for the VA to know what all of the different supports are out there for them, that nonprofits and some are not, some of them are informal organizations have to offer, is going to be super beneficial to the functioning and well-being of women veterans in the long run.
Well, thank you for that. Well, I mean, I'm sure we're all taking notes here. It's definitely, I hope we can figure out a way to do this going forward. But are there other things you want to talk about as far as other things that we can be doing to help your members?
Yeah, the Military Women's Coalition just re-endorsed I don't remember the title of the legislation, but it has to do with the motto for the VA.
Okay. Okay.
We endorsed that last year, so we re-endorsed that. And in some ways, some people think it's really trivial, or that it's not a big deal. And I mean, words do matter, actions matter, and words matter. And when you walk in and you don't see yourself included, here it is again. It's like part of the Department of Defense. You're a woman and you don't belong here and you can't do this job. Same thing happens at the VA. So we are definitely in favor of that and endorse that legislation. And there's so much more. Women need to feel safe when they go to the VA, to the hospitals and the CBOCs. And I'm sure that there's a lot that can be done to bring, I don't know specifically what that is, but for them to feel, the two important things is for women to feel safe and to feel acknowledged and equal as veterans. And I'm sure you've heard stories, but a lot of women get called Mr. Mr. So-and-so, and there's an assumption, or they call on, she comes in with her husband, and then they look at her husband, but she's the veteran. So it's continual. It's absolutely a continuum of what has happened, what the experience has been while they were in the service.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I've definitely heard that. And what that we have, we did pass it out of committee, and the motto bill, and it actually had the support of it was bipartisan support. I was very pleased to see that, and I'm very hopeful that this is going to get done. And I also want to say that we've been doing work on making sure that we have women's clinics at medical centers, so that there's a place for women to go, and there's in many places there's a separate entrance, so that they're not having to run the gauntlet of cat calls, and or even if it's not cat calling, just a feeling that they're walking by a bunch of the gazes of a bunch of men. And so there's a lot we can do in that regard. I know that we've been doing some work also on making available childcare, so that women that come into their appointments know that they can bring their children, and not have childcare be an obstacle to their being able to get, say, to meet their mental health appointment, or to meet any appointment for that matter. So those are some of the ways in which some of the things we've been trying to do, in light of the fact that we know that women are making up close to 20% of the enlisted. That's a lot, 1 out of every 5. And that's going to be reflected in the veteran numbers
Right.
in the next 10 years, right? So the VA has to be ready. A lot of my work has been about getting the VA ready for this diversity in terms of gender, in terms of LGBTQ veterans, in terms of the growing diversity racially among our veteran service members. And so, and you know, a lot of our women are also racially diverse too. It's diverse in so many different ways, and I think the VA also needs to be ready for that, and you know, and not just be ready, but start making those changes now. So, um, um, you know, I also just want to let you know that it's been one of my missions to make sure that we hear from organizations like yours. They're not necessarily the mainline veteran service organizations. We want to hear the different voices that haven't necessarily been heard before. So how can the committee, the House committee, continue to proactively reach out and elevate the voices of women veterans?
Well, we appreciate you inviting us here today and in prior hearings and testimonies. And the Military Women's Coalition could potentially be a significant organization if we had more membership. And but we're working on like no money and no support from. We finally got somebody to work about 10 hours a week behind the scenes, but we definitely could use a lot more than that, and just get the word out to help us. We're all volunteers, and it's not just that we're volunteers for the Military Women's Coalition, but we're all running our own organizations simultaneously. So this is like a yet another thing that we're doing for free. And it's not that we need to get paid to do what we're doing, but we do need to have probably like a full-time administrative person. And I know that that's not something that Congress can help us with directly, but there are existing organizations, the Military Coalition, not Military Women's, but the Military Coalition, you know, the Big Five or whatever they are, the old organizations. They have funding. I don't know how they got to that point, but their membership is primarily male, and it seems anything when it comes to women, it's like we don't have any money, and we don't get the support, and our voices are the last to be heard. And we did our annual meeting, and we anticipate some new folks have made applications to us, and hopefully that's gonna bring in a few. But we could absolutely get more membership. But you're asking me what can Congress do?
Well, what kind of my committee? Yeah, well, Congress and the committee, but you know,
Well, your committee.
my committee. I mean, but you know what? It's helpful to know what your situation is. So the people that are part of your coalition, this military coalition that you have, the Women's Military Coalition, they're basically people who lead organizations. Is what you're
Yes.
saying. They're all
Yeah.
leading organizations that are on a shoestring, and everyone. So it's like your coalition's on a shoestring, and everybody's leading organizations that are on a shoestring. Is basically what you're telling me. So,
Yeah.
you know, maybe there's some sort of leadership development and nonprofit development work that could be empowering. I mean, it's not. It may not be outside the scope of what this committee could do in terms of thinking about how we, you know, give organizations the tools they need to go out and develop themselves, right? So we'll give some thought to that. You know, I mean, as far, you know, because you know, this 20% of the military, that's still a lot of people. It's a lot of women, and they're looking for ways to be represented, ways to be able to organize. And so let's, I'll put my thinking cap on and think with you on that.
Okay,
Okay,
sounds good.
okay. Um, Let me see how much time. I think we're kind of at the near the end of our time together. It was really great to meet you and have a little time together to talk. And you really have raised some really, I think, salient points. And uh, and we'll see if we can't get to work on some of these things.
It sounds good.
Okay. All right, Paige, thank you so much for this time together.
Thank you.